not medical advice, purely educational and entertainment, or whatever you want to call it. So there's one side effect. I don't like that light going like that, but probably nothing I can do to change it. There's one side effect of anabolic steroids that I really don't hear anyone talking about. I have heard one YouTuber mention his issues with it, but if you're looking at videos about anabolic steroids, the side effects, the pros, the cons, like, if you're trying to learn about them, there's one thing I've noticed that is very overlooked, and that is that you inject them. Well, you don't have to inject all of them. There are oral anabolic steroids, although, as far as I know, all of them, except for oxandrolone, which is brand name Anavar, are liver toxic. Now, it's not like you can't take them. It's not like you can't take them and drink alcohol. But in large doses or for long periods of time, especially when mixed with other liver toxic substances, they're not that good for you. But I do think people worry about them more than they should. However, injectable anabolic steroids, which are non-liver toxic for the most part, and they are widely promoted. Like, if you go to any fitness YouTuber who talks about anabolic steroids, like, oh yeah, don't take oral steroids, your first cycle, injectables only. I mean, they do often say, like, test only, which is a good idea. Although, it's changed a bit, but, like some people advocate, like, 500 to start, some advocate, like, 200 to start. I think 500 is pretty high to start. But that's not the topic. The topic is that nobody mentions that all those needles you're putting into you constantly and all that stuff you're injecting into your muscles, it takes a toll on your body. Even if you just do TRT, and of course, it's very different from doing like an anabolic steroid cycle, but TRT, you would think, oh, you're not taking so much like a cycle. Like, I've thought about going on TRT, because it's really not like putting you back to natural. You're definitely enhanced, but I'm not saying it's unhealthy. It's just you're not replacing your lost testosterone, especially because like to literally do that would be very difficult. With what we have available, you're going to be elevated and for more of the day than you normally would be, and night. But even with TRT, using a very low dose comparatively of testosterone, you should administer it every day. Like, you could get away with every other day, but really you want to go on TRT, you want to try to mimic your natural production, you want to try to be healthy, keep your body in whack, not out of whack. You should inject every day, every morning. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter that much when you do it, but you should inject every day. It's ridiculous to inject once a week and go. And with TRT, you could use a 31 gauge, 5/16 of an inch little insulin needle. Those they're so tiny and thin. Like, you just put it in quickly, you don't even feel it. Some people are like, oh, is it in me? And it's like, yeah, it is. It's just really small. And then you inject, say you're using testosterone enanthate. You could use less than 1/10 of a milliliter per day. And you'd have enough testosterone. Testosterone propionate, you're probably going to go with like 2/10 of a milliliter per day. But even if you went with testosterone enanthate, and you're using like 0.04 milliliters per day. So you're not getting too much bodily stress from that little bit of substance, but there is something. But even that little bit of substance with that little tiny needle, if you're doing that every day, And remember this, testosterone replacement therapy, there's a good chance you'll be on it for the rest of your life. I'm 25 years old. If I'm going to live to 100, that means 75 years of daily injections. So it's like, yeah, not a big deal if you do that for a few weeks. Maybe not a big deal if you do that for a few months. Maybe not even a big deal if you do that for a few years. But a few decades? For nearly a century? Who knows, maybe you're going to live a whole nother century past today. That's a lot of injections. And until you're done having children, you probably will want to inject HCG every other day. Maybe you don't inject it every other day, but you're going to inject it at some point in time. Those are subcutaneous injections. Not going to be damaging your muscle, but still that's more injections to be doing. And testosterone can be injected subcutaneously, so if you got to do it for a century, you're probably going to be like injecting here, then 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 here, and then you're going to go into your fat. But you do that for a century, and you're going to have a lot of scar tissue, a lot of damage. It's not going to feel so great. Now, let's go to an anabolic steroid cycle. Once again, you should be injecting every day. And even a cycle on the lower side of things. Now, of course, you could do a test-only cycle, but assuming you're not doing a test-only cycle, let's say you're using testosterone, one other anabolic steroid that's injectable, who knows, let's throw in a third one that's injectable, but you're going to use at least like 2 anabolic steroids that are injectable, most likely, HCG, and then maybe you're going to be using human growth hormone or insulin, or both. So let's say you're using no human growth hormone, no insulin, you're still 3 substances injecting into your body every day. And because it's a cycle, you're going to be using larger amounts. I'm just going to pick a random figure, but even on a cycle that's on the lower, even on the low end of what's used by people, you're going to be injecting 0.5 milliliter per day. And even if you only do that for a few months. Now, earlier I said if you do that for a century, you're probably going to be going like here, and like all over the place. But most people just go here and here. Now, of course, pro bodybuilders at the high level, I'm sure they've gotten used to just doing it everywhere because they have to. But especially, and I know people that they do all their injections here. That's going to add up real fast. You're going to have a lot of scar tissue. And even if you do shoulders and glutes, you're going to have a lot of scar tissue. And unless you've already, hopefully you're not using anabolic steroids if you don't have a lot of muscle mass. But even if you have a lot of muscle mass and you start using like your traps and your chest and your tries, you're still going to be accumulating a good amount of damage and scar tissue. And that's real. It's not talked about, but that's real. You're going to be doing damage to your body. It can cause a wide variety of problems. One, it can become hard to inject stuff. If you got a bunch of scar tissue, you go to inject something, it might come back out because it doesn't seep into that nice soft tissue. It's real hard and not porous, and it just has nowhere to go. Even if it doesn't seep out, it doesn't absorb very well. That scar tissue can also hinder mobility. It can hinder proper health of that area. It's not how it should be. Your muscles are not meant to have a bunch of scar tissue in them. Can scar tissue go away? I think yes. I mean, I've read some stupidity that said scar tissue never goes away, but think about this. And I know muscle and skin are different tissues, but you get a cut on your arm. You know, sometimes you get a scar, sometimes you don't get a scar. As you get older, you tend to get more and more scarring, but as time goes on, that scar does tend to fade. Unless, you know, of course, you get like a major gash. It's going to leave a lifelong scar, but, you know, it's just a little cut. You're probably not going to see a scar. It's most likely pretty similar with muscle tissue. No, I'm not going to promise you that, but I do not think that you're going to get lifelong scarring from doing some minor damage to the tissue. Now, you start injecting some stuff that's really caustic with some really big needles, yeah, I think you can get lifelong scarring. But do I think you're going to get lifelong scarring from a 31 gauge 5/16 of an inch needle with a 1/10 of a milliliter of testosterone? No. Do I think you're going to get lifelong scarring from an anabolic steroid cycle? You know, if you do a heavier cycle, I do think you're probably going to get some degree of lifelong scarring. Maybe it will fade over the decades, but you're probably going to get some decent scarring. So yeah, that's something to really think about, especially because it's getting more and more popular to go on TRT. It's like, I would love to go on TRT, except there's a lot of reasons why I wouldn't. I don't like the idea of being dependent on something. Also, the country I live in doesn't really do TRT. Plus, if you travel around a lot, you got to bring it with you, and you don't know you could go to a country that has different laws, and you get in legal trouble. It's like, you know, most countries, testosterone is not illegal, especially if you have a prescription. But point is, there's a lot of complications with being dependent on testosterone. And the fact that you're dependent on it, even if it's not illegal somewhere, even if you don't have to travel, what happens if there's just something that happens and all of a sudden you can't get it? You go, but I have a prescription, I can just go to the pharmacy and get it. What if the pharmacy is out? What if the pharmacy is closed? What if there's an emergency and all the places are closed? Like, a lot of stuff can happen. You can't rely on your grocery store being open all the time, your pharmacy being open all the time. Now, of course, that sucks, because grocery store closes. You know, most people in cities are going to die. Some people are going to eat each other. A lot of people are going to kill each other. But yeah, there's not really much of an alternative. Not many people in cities can sustain themselves without grocery stores. I can't sustain myself without a grocery store for very long. Now, I do make sure that I stock up on food and water and alcohol, but you know, they'd run out real quickly. I'm in Belarus where I cannot own a gun, but not to give the wrong idea, but all your food and water and alcohol is worth nothing if somebody with a gun can come and take it away from you. That also means that if you have a gun, it's potentially more valuable than having a stockpile of food and water and alcohol. Good thing to keep in mind. But yeah, you can't rely on your ability to always get testosterone. And then you're going to have to rely on your body, which you have screwed up. Now, if you've taken HCG every other day the whole time, you know, probably they're still pretty healthy. But you still need to get your brain to send the signal. What if you can't get some tamoxifen or some clomiphene or some raloxifene? That's going to take quite a while, especially if you've been on TRT 10, 20, 30 years, and now you're kind of old, and all of a sudden there's an emergency, and your food is suboptimal, you're not hitting the gym, you don't have the SERM, like tamoxifen, clomiphene, raloxifene. You're not going to be doing too well. That's scary. You know, of course, I'm not going to do too well because of these. If there's an emergency, what happens if they break? I'm screwed. So that's why I do think about getting laser eye surgery. Good stuff to think about. But yeah, you're also going to be building up scar tissue. And scar tissue is not good. You're going to get enough of it in your life without sticking a bunch of needles and injecting a bunch of stuff all the time. Yeah, not good. Keep it in mind. Like I gave minor examples, but really the more advanced bodybuilding steroid cycles, you're going to be doing multiple injections every day. That's a lot of scar tissue. I hope this helps. Check out my other videos. Check out my Instagram, natural_true_fitness. And check out my book on tendinitis. Go on Amazon, type in A Systematic Guide to Defeating Tendinitis by Andrew Hutchings. Get the fastest shipping. I was just reading a message, but I'll show you my book. I brought some with me. And I actually decided that I'm going to make a second edition because so many people are just so ignorant and also lazy, even when they're not ignorant, about proper diet. And it's like, treatment doesn't work if you're not eating right. It's just like going to the gym doesn't work if you want to just eat Twinkies. Now, of course, they're good for carbs, but I mean if you only eat Twinkies. Not that everybody's only eating Twinkies, but the point is, you got amazing treatment in here, but if you don't eat right, it's not going to work as good as it should. And I literally wrote in this book that you need to have a proper diet, like sufficient in X, Y, and Z, but that this is not a book on diet, so I'm not going to elaborate, because that's a whole different topic. But it turns out that I need to elaborate because so many people do not have anything close to the proper diet. And this is the backside of the book. I do not have such long hair anymore. Nice field in southern Belarus. If you can spot the Easter egg in this book, well, you'll get some sort of prize. But I'm guessing no one's going to spot it, but you never know. So check it out on Amazon. I know it costs money, but guess what else costs money? Driving your car to the doctor, paying for the doctor, driving your car home from the doctor, going to another doctor and another doctor and another doctor and a physical therapist and a chiropractor and a this and a that, all the while you're wasting time, which is perhaps more valuable than money, depending on your situation. And you never get time back. Probably a good idea to get this ASAP and save your time and start enjoying your life again.